Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another great FAR video. No, I don't think so. But it's going to be better than probably anything else you've ever received because it's hard to make this very dry FAR stuff worthwhile. These and the FOIs, man, just you can't hardly stomach this crap. Anyway, I'm going to do my best today to try to help you understand this next portion. Our next video is dealing with cross-country requirements of a student pilot. Now, we're not talking about a recreational pilot, we're not talking about a private pilot or a commercial pilot, we're talking about a student pilot. If you already hold a pilot certificate, recreational or higher, this does not apply to you. You have to go to another reg if you want to try to solo another aircraft. It's a whole entire another conversation, okay? So this is dealing with only student pilots. Please make sure it's in continuation of our videos and sequence as we've progressed this far. So today we're going to break this video up into basically 4 to 5 parts. So the first part today is going to be talking about just the limitations on the cross-country solo flight requirements, which is paragraph A. So we're going to talk about paragraph A, B, C, D, and then one other letter for the remainder of the reg, because unlike like the predecessor 6187 that we talked about, which is how to solo someone, this is kind of the same way, except it's how to do solo cross country. So only one letter in 87 dealt with the category of aircraft, and only one letter in this one's going to deal with the category of aircraft. So even though the reg is this long, we only need to know about this much of it. So not that hard. Don't get drowned in how big the reg is or how many pages. Okay, so the very first thing we'll talk about is paragraph A. And it says here, except as provided in paragraph B of this section, a student pilot must meet the requirements of this section before conducting a solo cross-country flight or any flight greater than 25 miles from the airport from where the flight originated. Now, without knowing this entire reg, you would just read this and you would say, okay, so if I want to go beyond 25, I'm good to go? And the answer is absolutely not, because if you read the rest of the reg, it says that they're limited to 50 unless they have a specific endorsement. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you now that this means that if you're going to go beyond 25 but less than 50, then you have to have additional training in order to do this. Now, some of you may be saying to yourself, well, Todd, it says a solo cross-country flight. And I'm like, yes, it does. And if you remember from our regs way back when we talked about 61, the very first part of 61, and we defined the word cross-country flight, the phrase cross-country flight, and the meaning of that, and that it's defined as any time that you take off and land another airport from one airport, or take off an airplane from one airport and land at another airport. That is actually considered cross-country flight. So by definition, that is cross-country, but you can only apply those flights that are greater than 50, those cross-countries greater than 50, towards the cross-country requirement for a pilot certificate. So don't get confused with those things. There's actually a couple of different definitions of cross-country flight and how it can be used, but that's not the point of this video. Let's actually progress on. Maybe I'll do a video on that if enough people request it. Maybe I'll do a video specifically on cross-country time. Make sure you post the comments down below and click the link button, smash the subscribe, and click the little bell on the side so you'll be notified for all new videos. Anyway, let's move on. So it says here, that was a shameless plug, wasn't it? Anyway, making a solo flight and landing at any other location than the airport of origination, which means that your student can't actually land at another airport unless they've had training. So here's 2 limitations that go along with the other limitations that you had as a student pilot, which are listed in 6189. The only difference between those limitations and these 2 limitations is these 2 limitations can actually be lifted with additional training. They can be lifted with additional training, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next video, and talk about paragraph B and how you can actually lift these limitations. So in addition to here, to kind of close out A, it says, except as provided in paragraph B, which we're going to talk about next video, a student pilot who seeks solo cross-country privileges must what? What must you do? Well, remember, this cross-country flight privileges does not necessarily mean greater than 50. Understand that. It means landing at another airport, which can be seen in the 2 limitations above here. There's 2 limitations right over there. Okay? So you got to understand that. You must have received flight training from an authorized instructor to provide that flight training on the maneuvers, procedures of this section that are appropriate to the make and model of aircraft in which solo cross-country privileges result, which means you have to have some training in order to make that flight to any other airport, and you must have also have the training if you want to go beyond 25 nautical miles. And yes, the training is slightly different for each. Not much, slightly different for each. So again, we're also saying that you've received that training from the maneuvers, and that you've demonstrated proficiency on those maneuvers, and that you've satisfactorily accomplished all the training in 6187, which is your pre-solo stuff. Got to make sure you've done that, and make sure that you comply with any limitations that the instructor puts on your endorsement, or make sure that your student applies with any limitations that you put on their endorsement. So if you want to go beyond that, okay, so in other words, if you want to go beyond that, what are some things we have to know? Well, it says a student pilot who seeks solo cross-country flight privileges must have received ground and flight training from an authorized instructor on the cross-country maneuvers and procedures listed in this section appropriate to the aircraft to be flown. And that means that if you switch up airplanes, you're going to have additional training in the aircraft that you're going to fly. So if someone does a cross-country in a Piper Archer, can they also do a cross-country in a Cessna Skyhawk? And the answer is absolutely not, because they actually have to receive the training appropriate to that. It means that you have to go back up with them and make sure they can do everything in that particular one, because that is appropriate aircraft to be flown. Okay? So if you have any questions, make sure you please post them in the comment section below. I'm always willing to answer any and all questions, and you guys have done a great job with messaging me and asking me questions. I want you to be very successful on your video. A little bit over my 6-minute mark, but I'm going to wrap it up today. The next video is actually going to cover the paragraph B of this section. And that is a kind of lengthy one, and it's a kind of an odd one. It's not something that we do normally all the time as instructors, but it is going to be somewhat interesting. So please tune in, watch my channel for that coming up. For 6193B, that's almost guaranteed to come up on your check ride. Normally it does. So we'll get to look at that in just a minute. We'll see you on the next go. I'm Todd Shellnut. Remember that it's not hard as long as you have a great flight instructor. See ya.